The three of us are together because we recently had a new healer come to our community. Matt Young, or the Newcastle Oracle, has recently shared some workshops that we've attended and experienced his healing. And we want to share with you what it is that he's doing so you can decide if it's something that you'd like to experience and attend. The three of us will share a bit about who we are so you get to know where we're coming from and our perspectives. And we'll share a bit about what we experienced and what we saw at the workshops. So, Kai, then Crystal, then me. Go ahead, Kai.
Hey everybody, I'm Kai Bertrand. I'm a Hawaiian kahuna, which is the Hawaiian version of a shaman. My specialty is removing negative energy from people, places, and things. But I am an author, a mentor, a speaker, and one of the things I love to do as an energy healer is to obviously play with energy. And I get to see what's happening when others are working with energy. So when I got to sit in and with a couple of sessions with Matt Young, the Newcastle Oracle, it was really interesting. So if you want to find out what happened, pay attention.
And Crystal.
That was awesome, Kai. My name's Crystal Novak. I'm a psychic reader. I also do, I'm a conscious channel, and I also do energy work. Um, I've been doing this for over 40 years. Um, and what was really beneficial for me was divine intervention led me to a meditation study group um, that was channeled, and there was an ascended master who taught the class, and his name is Katumi. So we met once a week for 35 years and received instruction. So meditating, breath work, learning about our chakras, learning about Kabbalah, the tree of life, Hermetic doctrine, which is about the laws and principles of energy, the rays, working with our consciousness and how to uh, identify limited beliefs and then how to actually pull them out of your consciousness. My experience with Matt on an energy level is it's like recognizing a fellow colleague of the energy that Katumi used when we worked in class. He is part of a group of masters that are called the Great White Brotherhood, and they support um, the work that's being done by those masters for the furtherment and continuation of the divine plan, which includes all of us being here on this planet, having our own spiritual experiences. In particular, the energy I am aligned with is the Christ consciousness energy. And I feel like when Matt is doing his work, it's a very similar energy, that he is in alignment as well with source from that place. So it felt very comfortable to be in his presence and to uh, experience his work as he did his work with the energy that he is connected to.
Great, great. I know listening to both of you introduce yourselves, it made me think about my own history in some different ways. I'm Laureli Shamayo. I'm an intuitive eye reader. I consider myself to be a body psychology coach, and I love to apply my work to matchmaking. I'm thinking a little bit more about the body psychology work sitting here with both of you and thinking about the different trainings that I've had in my life. I guess I've been opening to do this work with people for about 20 years and working with people for 17 years. In addition to practicing my own work, I also run the Mimi fairs. And Crystal, you had me thinking about what are the different other trainings that I had. So I was part of a non-duality group for a while, like how did I run into them and how did that happen? And, this other teacher that I was connected with for a little bit. So I was a scientist and it affects some of how I am with witnessing Matt and experiencing Matt's work. I'm a bit of a skeptic and so a little bit slower in some ways to open to these things than like some practitioners. I think of myself as less aware of what it is that I'm doing and the way I work with people than the two of you, for example. So I know I pick up a lot about people and I can feel Matt's heart and I feel a sense of um, trust and joy when I'm with him. And still the part of me is like, well, he says he's helped thousands and thousands of people and hundreds of people in person and thousands of people online and where he shared in a different context. And so I feel that and believe that. I hear it. And then like, is it really true? And so it's so important for me to have to experience it myself. And just a bit more about me. So I read a person's soul in their eyes, and my aim is to reflect our soul, just to help them better understand themselves, who they are, and make choices that are in alignment with who they are. And I do so much community work because I believe that we all grow better, more, and feel so much joy doing it together as community. We learn from each other. And I'm just passionate about rippling out of the consciousness and the authenticity and the awareness and the tools and all these things. And so I run community events for that reason, for all of us, for me, for the greater impact that we can make. And I'm here wanting to support Matt and have Matt get more exposure to the community for the same reasons. Well, let's see. How about if we maybe let's go around and talk a little bit about well, so Matt's been doing these workshops and they've been pretty small so far and they could get really big because we mentioned in this other context, he started off in the religious community, has had a really big impact there. And as he's stretching into the more, it's so strange to call it this, but mainstream metaphysical community, more people will know about him. He's a super impactful healer. So maybe a thing that would be good to talk about first, Kai, some of the things you were talking about the size of his spirit team and how for a lot of us this might be a once in a lifetime experience to connect with someone like him. Or we're really lucky that he's connected in with the MeWe and the BEPC communities right now, and he's small now in the community, and we all anticipate that he might grow very, very fast. Yeah, maybe can you say a little bit about that? About yeah, just like the magnitude of the other beings that seem to line up and come to work with him and the energy that he taps. And Crystal, feel free if you want to jump in and share about this too, so people get a sense of what they're walking into.
Yeah, so part of my ability is that I can see things, right? I can see angels, demons, things that I don't even have names for. And it's something that I could do ever since I was an infant, according to my mother. And when I went to the first, because I've been to two of his workshops, the first I went just out of curiosity, just because, we get new healers that come into our community all the time. And for me, um, I like to refer people to different people for different reasons. So if somebody comes to me for a particular thing and it's not really my strong suit, then I want them to go to someone who that is their strong suit. And in order to do that, I like to just kind of, I don't know, assess people, and not necessarily in a bad way, but just to see like who they are, what they're like, what their energy is like, would I feel comfortable sending people to them? Would I be comfortable working with them? And, sometimes the answer is no, to be honest. So when, everyone's talking about Matt, I'm like, okay, well, let's just see what he's got. So I wanted to go to his talk. And the funny thing is when I was signing up for the talk, I'm thinking, I'm going to be the only one there. I knew it. Like I heard it in my head. It was like, you're going to be the only one there. And then I talked Crystal into going with me. So, um, but what was interesting about that first time for me, like what I saw was like, I saw all these beings just walking through the room, like different spirits, different energies. I saw angels walking through the room. They were, and so I thought, okay, that's really interesting because when people work on other people, like they have like their spirit team that shows up to kind of help them. And in his case, like he had like really powerful beings just kind of show up in the room. They didn't necessarily stay, but like, here'd be an angel would show up over here, then another angel would show up over there, and then they'd go away, and then another would come back. And so it was like just like the power of the beings that were coming just to visit were amazing to me. And in the second thing that I went to, because I had told my friend about the first time I went, and I wanted her to come and experience, and I didn't want her to go by herself in case, again, we were the only two people in the room, because I didn't know what was going to happen. It turned out there were more people, which was great. But I mean, I'm sitting in the chair and I'm like, okay, I'm just here to observe. That's all I want to do. And he's sitting in the chair across from me at his table, and I'm looking out the window behind him because he's sitting in front of a window, and literally there's like, I don't know, like 50 people standing out there, and we hadn't even started yet. And then when he started working on people, there were even more people. It was ridiculous, like how many beings and energies came to assist him during the process. And I know, Crystal, you mentioned you were on your way out and you actually saw some of them outside as well.
Yes, I did. Yeah. I was walking by and so it was dark outside, so the room was lit, so I could see more into the room and I could tell that you guys were there. And yeah, there was very strong angelic presence outside the room. Um, as well as almost like a pillar of light in the room as well. And then it made me laugh because it's going up into the atmosphere. And so it's like one of those big searchlights like they do um, at big grand openings of places. And that's kind of what it reminded me of. It's a big spiritual searchlight. Like, here it is. Come to this place. If you want some of this, come here. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting because for me, I actually kind of saw it like as a almost like a big bowl that every all his spirit team was like contributing stuff into that he was then drawing from. And it's interesting that you would see it as a column because that's kind of how I saw it, like this long, thick column of golden white light. And yeah, like for me, like the top of it was like a bowl, and it was interesting that you saw it as like a spotlight moving. So yeah, the imagery is kind of similar, but yeah.
Well, I wonder if we might go around first and talk a little bit about the experience of him working on us, because he worked on each of us. Crystal, you were in the first event Kai's referencing, and I was at the second one.
Mhm.
And we also heard a lot of his stories, and we also watched him experience him working on other people. So we each had different experiences with him working on us. Maybe I'll go ahead, I'll just share mine first, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I was the third of us that he had worked on, so it was at the second event, and I particularly had some inflammation in my body. And he said it's better if someone, or he often has someone ask for a specific thing that he wants, that they want him to work on. I think it's part of the openness and the willingness for the healing. But he doesn't necessarily need something. And so I mentioned that as something I know it's been a challenge for me lately. And I know he shared some things. He asked if he could put his hands on my ankles and on my knees. And his energy feels very safe, very soft. And I wasn't aware of anything specific physically happening when he was doing it. I had already was visualizing some things, knowing that I was going to ask him to work on this. Just from hearing him work on other people beforehand, I started doing my own process. And then when he was working on me, and Kai will talk about what that looked like because Kai was watching. Um, I didn't, I couldn't tell and feel anything different in my body as it was happening. I just felt the gentleness of his energy. And I'm someone that has some history and sensitivity with people touching me and being close to me, and I felt really safe having him there. And since the big difference for me is movement, I don't feel pain, but it's movement. We had me check my movement afterwards, and I was walking around a whole bunch better. So I came back and he did a little more work, and I walk around a little bit more and move my legs around, and came back and he did a little bit more work. And my legs felt so much looser. Everything felt looser and more mobile, and that's been the big inhibitor for me. And when we were done, it was just a few minutes later. I just happened to just started hopping and just kind of jogged back to my chair. I just felt so much better in my body, and I just amazed that it's so quick. And I know that he talked about having the whole group visualize things as he was working on me too. So yeah, Kai, did you want to say a little bit of what it seemed like when he was working on me from your perspective?
Well, well, yeah, because part of what I wanted to do was just observe everything that was going on. I wanted to just see all the people, all the energy, where it was going, how it was affecting people, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so while you were getting worked on, I basically like stared at you and just wanted to see like if I could like notice any changes. And so, as he was working on you and your issue, I literally watched, your body change. Like not in a like drastic way, but I mean just enough like it was almost like like if you had a like a really full balloon and like you saw it just shrink a little bit. I mean it was still full, it was, it could, balloons can still fly, but it was like it had just a little less air in it. And it was really interesting because I mean, I don't necessarily perceive that as like I watched it as a physical change. I watched it as an energy change, but I saw it like as if it was occurring physically. So that was really interesting. And then because of that, like yeah, I could feel like things moving through, like the energy was moving better. Like as long as he kept like reducing it, then the energy would flow better. And then that's why you were like, oh yeah, this feels great. And you're walking around and I was like, look at her go. So that was really interesting. And I also saw that the energy literally like just went exactly where it was supposed to go. So it was like he sent the energy and it went here, it went here, it went here, it went there. It was like very directed. it was almost like the energy is like, yep, I'm going there. Like it knew where it was supposed to go. It wasn't like some random, like, okay, we'll just kind of make our way through. It's like, no, the energy was like directed. So that was interesting.
Then I had already watched him work on a few people first, so that helped me in terms of my openness to the experience. And then I was surprised at how quick it was. Although I watched him work on other people and I saw how fast it was. And I was surprised how different I felt in my body, which of course, if it's having the impact, and I watched other people and how they changed, yeah, it was just really amazing to feel it and experience it. Maybe, Crystal, do you want to talk a little bit about what it was like, just the feeling of him working on you, and then
Sure.
maybe Kai, and then we can go around and talk about what it was like watching him with other people. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so he did an event um when we were at the BEPC fair. Um, and as Kai mentioned earlier, she signed up to go. And in my head, I had no awareness that just didn't know he was going to do that. Um, he sat across from me, so we had chatted off and on during the day. And then Kai mentioned later that she was going to go. And like she said, she talked me into going because part of me was like, I just want to go home. So, but I stayed. And so it was just her and I. So Matt talked and shared stories about the different people he's worked on and the different situations around that and how that impacts him as well when he's doing his work. So that was interesting. So after he got done talking, I said, well, I want to just feel it. I want to like experience that with you. And I didn't have a specific ailment in mind per se. I was just I am terminally curious. I was just curious about how it was going to feel. So my caveat, I am very particular about energy in my space. Um, I'm very sensitive to energy. Um, because I'm feeling everything 24/7 all the time. So you get to a place where there's enough stimulation coming all the time that if this is going to come even more into my space, then it has to be something that I feel safe with, comfortable with, and that I trust. And I felt that totally with Matt. Like you mentioned that you're not comfortable with necessarily with people physically coming into your space. I'm the same way. Um, so he stepped in, he started doing this work, his energy thing. And so I was just more focused on how that was. Um, so some of the main support people, entities that I work with is Archangel Michael, Master Katumi, the Lady of the Lake, and Master Jesus. Um, so when he started running the energy and doing what he was doing, it felt very similar to those energies that I work with, that I'm aligned with. Um, so I like how you said soft. It was a soft energy. It didn't come bullying its way in. It was just like a nice warm shower kind of thing. It was just very nice the way it came through. Um, it felt buoyant. Um, and then while he was doing that, I said out loud, I feel this compulsion like to put my hand on your heart. And he had mentioned that he doesn't like people coming into his space and doing stuff like that. So, like I said, I felt like I wanted to do that, but I'm like, push, pull, push, pull. And God goes, just do it and complete the circuit. So I'm like, okay. And so I did. I put my hand on his heart. And I'll be interested to have Kai share her experience about what she noticed when that was happening. Um, and at that moment, I felt like we were in a big column of energy of light. Um, and the timbre of it, the quality of it, the appearance of it is what I experience when I'm working with the higher masters and the angelic realm. Um, yeah, it's hard. It's all this stuff. It's hard to describe and put it into words. Um, but I am planning to do more work with him when we have more of these events that are happening because I want to do more of that and I want to experience it more. Um, Residually, I felt good. And I feel like it's like a little reservoir in my space and it's releasing some stuff and then I'm acclimating it and then it releases more stuff and I'm acclimating it. Um, it's kind of like going to the spa. It's my spa day. Come out, you feel a little fresher, a little scrub, a little more. Felt good. Yeah,
And then
that
there's
was it.
incremental changes over time too. There's an additional,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And I respect that because if you tap into a huge energy, you've got to give your body, the physical body is the slowest vibrating body. So change happens longer with the physical. It can happen a lot faster with the mental or the emotional, but the physical takes time. So to bring that big energy in, um, you have to have the awareness of not overwhelming this vessel of our nervous system. And Matt just felt like he was really skilled in that. Like, this is where this goes, this is where that goes. I know how that works. I'm going to plug this in. Um, so I have respect for the fact that it wasn't like one big giant thing like I said, I have this reservoir that I'm utilizing and tapping into and allowing it to come through. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels similar to the way that he worked in layers with people. And as Kai and I talk about some of the other people that we watched, I think you'll hear some of the same kinds of things.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah, so
Kai, yeah, you say anything
um
about
yeah, well, because Crystal and I were the only ones in the room, and and my objective was to observe. I'm like, okay, because she said, "Yeah, I'll go first." I'm like, "Great, then I get to watch." Um, and so for me, as soon as he stepped forward, and they were talking, and I could was like again that buildup of the energy that I could feel, and then he put his hand on her shoulder, and I was just like staring at her leg because they were like focused on her leg. I'm like, okay, so I did that, and I could see like her entire skeleton light up, and this light was like coming out of it, just like emanating from her, from the marrow of her bones. And I was like, okay, I've never seen that before. So that was really interesting. And then I was watching the energy, go down into him and then across to her and go down her body, and like it was going underground under her feet, connecting back to him and going up into his body again. And when she said that she wanted to put her hand on his heart, I said, yeah, go ahead and do it because then you will complete the circuit. And so as soon as she did that, yeah, that's what I saw. Like it would come this way, go this way, go this way, go this way, go back up, and then go out. And that's how it was. It was like this perfect, but it was running through the floor. It was really interesting. And I'm like, okay, I've never seen that before either. And so I think that is the thing that has been I guess, the whole point of me going to observe things with Matt is that I have seen things I have never seen energy do before, which is what makes it really interesting for me.
great, great. Well, and let's see, you had him work on you too. You want to say anything about what that experience was
Yeah.
like?
Well, the funny thing is, it's like when I get work done by people, like I purposely don't, well, there's sometimes when I will have an intention set, like I need this particular thing worked on. But more often than not, especially if I'm working like with a new healer and I feel like their energy is good, because at that point I knew that Matt's energy was fine and I wouldn't have any issues. I just pretty much said, you know what, whatever needs to be healed, do it. Because I don't, I purposely did not want to set um, an agenda for it
Mhm.
because we all have things that we need to be healed without us even knowing that it needs to be healed. So I wanted that opportunity for the energy to whack out those things even if I'm not aware of them. And so when he put his hands on me, I felt just like this warm energy like running through, and it was, and I didn't actually feel it. A lot of times when people work on me, I kind of feel like energy pinging through like a pinball machine kind of thing sometimes. but I didn't feel that. It just felt like yeah, like this warm, soft rush all the way through. And then, he was talking about like, you now have the ability to do this, let's open that, and I'm not sure. I didn't ask him what he was seeing at that point, but I was like, okay. And by the time it was done, like I felt comfortable, I was relaxed, I wasn't anxious, I wasn't nervous. I felt like, okay, great, on to the next. And when I had gotten there, I was a little bit tired, so I was a little bit more energized by the time we left. But yeah, but that night I slept really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember as he was working on people, he talked about an impact on all of us that were there and impacts we would have sleeping that night. And he was including us in working on different people.
Mhm.
And then Crystal, I said, or let's say, I think you said that you didn't notice a lot of what was happening with Kai because you were still in your own experience after he had just worked on you. Right?
Yeah, and I also felt that I kind of wanted to honor that they were doing their own thing, and I didn't want to be intrusive into that experience. Um, so I was listening to what was being said, but I wasn't like really looking at what the energy was doing and stuff. And part of that too was also because I was still just enjoying the buzz of sitting in what that experience had been. I also find it interesting, Kai, that this is the first time I heard you say this stuff about like my skeleton was lit up and that about my bone marrow. And because today I was thinking, actually yesterday and again today, it's like if I was going to go back and have another healing, I would postulate that I wanted it something that just would continue to clean my blood. And that's where blood cells are made from, is in the bone marrow. So I thought that's very interesting correlation for you to share that, because that's kind of the way I've been looking at it. It's like that's what I want it to do, because then I don't have to pick any one thing. If my blood's clean, then it's my blood's dumping toxins and stuff, then it benefits the entire system. So I thank you for sharing that. That was interesting.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, obviously, your guides knew that that's kind of what was something on your agenda. So when you did your healing, I mean, because that's the first thing I saw.
Wow.
That was the most prominent thing I saw because it was not just the outside of the skeleton, it was literally in the marrow. And it was like from the marrow out.
Yes.
So I thought, okay. And it wasn't just like your legs, it was the whole skeleton.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's interesting.
Totally fascinating.
Well, a big
Yeah.
part of why Matt is doing this is not only to heal people of specific things, it's also to wake them up, to wake them to more of their aliveness in this life and their spirit, and to open them as healers. And for
Mhm.
those of us that are various versions of healers, so that we expand our capacity and can do more with more people. Like he wants to learn us all to learn from him, and he's learning from us too.
Yes. And he also has other abilities besides doing, not like this is a thing. I mean, because the work he does is phenomenal. But he's also very psychic and can do readings on people as well and give them information, even if they don't go through the energy process that he does. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah. And he's also done lots of counseling. He's been a youth pastor. He's also counseled adults and stuff. So um, one of the things he and I talked with was about discernment, which is when somebody sits down and you go to work with them, you have to have a level of discernment because you have to know what they can hear, what they can't hear, what they're able to take on, what they can't take on. So in that moment, you might see this whole list of stuff, but you know there's no way that person's going to be able to hear all that. So I go with guidance about what's the most pertinent thing that needs to come out right now. And I believe he functions in that same fashion. He recognizes that sometimes it's kind of comes back to the person. Where are they? Where are they in their healing space, in their personal journey about what level of work you can do? So,
And part of what I appreciate
yeah.
about him and all three of us is that it's done with a bunch of humility at the same time. Right. So having to
Yes.
assess, like discern, like what might the other person be able to be with, and yeah,
Mhm.
and knowing that it's an exploration.
Yeah. And he knows that he could just wipe you out with one statement if he really like was super blunt about something. So he'll like, if he's sharing something with you that might be like, you might squirm a little bit, not want somebody to be looking at you. He keeps his eyes closed so that you can have that moment and not have him looking at you while he's telling you something that might be a little hard to hear. Um, or he might bring up some old stuff for you. So he has a good level of discernment, and yeah, he's not arrogant one way, shape, or form or another. No, no.
Well, I was thinking it might be great to talk a little bit about some of the other people that he worked on, with some care about talking about them. One person I'm thinking of, I don't remember specifically what they said when they walked up, Kai, that it was, um, say it's, so it's a person that you know why they were there. Uh, it seemed like they have some different various pain, like all through their body, not as intense as another person that he worked on. But I know there's definitely a lot of trouble that they have moving and a lot of awkwardness walking up to the front, to the awkwardness in their physical movement. And
Mhm.
after he worked on her once or twice, I don't remember what it was. There was just so much more fluidity in her when she walked back to her seat. Like her pelvis had been very stuck and locked before, and just felt like it was just moving and flowing. And that's as I was sitting way across the room. That's what it looked like to me. She certainly seemed a lot happier after he worked on her. Do you have anything else you want to say about what that was like, what you saw, and what you know she experienced?
Yeah, well, it was really funny because in the beginning, she was very resistant. And the funny thing is like but even though she wanted to be worked on because I told her, I was like, this is what you need to do. And she's like, all right, fine, I'm game, I'll go for it. She's like, I'm curious enough that I'll do it. And I'm like, okay. And that's all it is. It's like, you don't have to step forward. It's like, just go and satisfy your curiosity, if nothing else. Right. And that's what I would encourage other people to do. It's just like, if nothing else, satisfy your curiosity. But she got up because she was like, I'm gonna see if this is working, if this is working or not. So she walks up there, stalks up there, and crosses her arms. I'm like, seriously? And then so he kept telling her to relax, relax, and she's like, this is relaxed. I'm like, no, it isn't.
But she kept pulling her arms in, like, yeah, various ways. Yeah.
Yeah. And so finally, like, he got her to like drop her arms, and then I watched the energy start to flow through, and it was really, and I told her this. I said, like the energy was, it was almost like it was going through, but it was like stuttering all the way down. So it was like all the way down her body until I could hit the spots that it needed to go to, because it needed to go all the way down to her feet,
Mm,
to get all this the energy moving again. And
mm,
yeah, it was, and I told her, I was like, you were fighting the thing the whole way. I was like, you need to, and this is one of those moments where like the conscious mind needs to get out of the way so that the energy can actually do what you want it to do.
mhm,
Um, but yeah, so it took a couple of tries for him, and he was trying to make her laugh so she would loosen up a little bit and let go of control a little bit. And he was able to get it to flow a lot better through. And yeah, and I watched like the energy go to the places that it needed to go to, and then I actually watched the adjustment happen, like subtle, but it was like, okay, the hip turned this way, the knee turned like that. It was really interesting. And then when I talked to her afterwards, she was like, yeah, that was pretty good. She's like, yeah, you know what I need? I'm like, another session. And she was just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But like she was able to see an immediate benefit to physical issues that she's had literally for years. I mean, it changed and improved in just a matter of minutes. So that was a significant difference. I haven't talked to her since then, but I know that when you deal with the level, the intensity of energy that you have, it takes a few days for it to process through. It can take,
mhm.
depending on how long it takes your body to process everything, it can take anywhere from like 10 minutes to 2 weeks. And you just don't know. It depends on how fast you process. But I'm assuming at this point, if I give her a call, she'll probably tell me that she's still getting the benefit
Mm.
of Saturday night. So yeah,
Yep.
that was really interesting.
And I think about the person next to me. The person next to me didn't go up to work on a specific thing. He said that he had an idea of what he wanted for her, and he She was facing away from us. I didn't see her expression, but I imagine that she started crying as he was saying this. He was thanking her so much for the service that she does, so much that she gives, to me and to other people in her life and to the community. And I believe she felt really touched by that and really seen by that. And she said afterwards, I remember because she came back to her seat, she just grabbed her stuff and said, "I'm going." She was like all energized and she took off and went home. And she said the next day, and she said that he whispered something to her about how to go to sleep. Just because she said she's a little bit hard going to sleep. And so she did that and she was able to go to sleep. And then the next day she just had such fantastic energy. And I know she's been on a big opening journey and really opening to her gifts. And so I don't know all of how it impacted her, but definitely it was a very positive, energizing experience for her. Anything
Yeah,
you, yeah.
for that, it was really interesting because when like you said, she was facing away from us. We could only see her back. But I was watching the energy go through her body, and it was like, it was kind of like bursting different spots of like energy blocks through her body, which is interesting. But the thing that I was most focused on is across her back, her shoulders, they were slightly hunched. And I was like, and it was weird because when I focused on it, it looked like, um, you know how like way back in the day they used to like yoke the oxen together with like the wood block things. It looked like it was that, and like the back part of it. And while he was working on her and she's feeling really good and everything like that, and I just thought, yeah, but the wood block is still there. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it will dissolve in time, as she processes the energy through, or it will be something to work on at a later date. In other words, like the thing might have been so thick that he couldn't get it all in one shot, for the time being. And so I thought, okay, whatever. So I'm not going to mention it. The next day, I wanted to see if it had dissolved some, thinned out some, or anything. And so I finally got to talk to her at the end of the day, and I said, yeah, I saw this thing that's kind of like the oxen yoke around your neck, which for me that means like responsibility, like you take on too much stuff. And she was like, what's really interesting is because when he put his hands on my shoulders, like I felt the energy vibrating, and it was, I was trying to get the energy to go towards the center, but it stopped like right here. And I'm thinking, oh, isn't that interesting? Because that's the shape of the yoke. I'm like, okay. And but she goes, but eventually I felt it like go away. And I'm like, okay. And I said, well, I told her that I saw the thing at the back. The back part of it hadn't been dissolved yet. And so I wanted to check to see. And she said, yeah, go ahead and look at it. So when I looked at it, I could still see something, but instead of being like all the way across her shoulders, it was shorter and it was thinner. So I was like, okay, so it's in the process of actually dissolving. So you're still processing the energy through. So I'm thinking probably by the next time I see her, it's going to be gone.
Hmm.
That's right. And you remind me, I talked to her about it afterwards, and she said that when he had his hands on her shoulders, she could see that his hands weren't moving, but it felt like he was vibrating, and she could feel the energy vibrating, like in towards her. Yeah. Yeah. So she had more of a physical sensation while it was happening. Yeah, than we did. Okay, great. And then another person I want to talk about is someone that, and this person was standing on the side. So I got to see this person from the front when he was working on her. I remember she came up saying something about wanting to work on pain and or just working with the all through her body. And he was asking her like on the 0 to 10 scale, like where is it? And she was sort of like not answering. He said, "It's okay, I know it's like a 15, right? Where it shouldn't go above a 10, but it's like so bad." And she's just sort of like, like yeah, sort of shyness. And he worked on her in layers, so just a little bit, and then how is it, and what's the number, and more, and like a little bit, how's the number, um, and it just so again, I'm far away, you were closer, and you see different things than I do. And uh it seemed like she was just gradually like there's this gradual opening up in her body as he was doing layer by layer. And there was much more joy that was coming up on her face as it was happening. I think as she was able to feel the pain decreasing and probably able to feel more movement. But he got it down like maybe to like a half instead of, I think it was where she started off so high and the pain got so much lower. And I just think she probably was just like so much awe and shock and surprise in her when he finished,
Yeah.
like never imagining that was
Yeah.
possible. Yeah, what did you?
Yeah, well, the thing is in the beginning, I mean, and this is true for everybody, like someone who has lived with pain for a long time gets used to it. And the thought of not having that pain is almost unimaginable. Like people always say that, oh, I wish I was no longer in pain. I wish I didn't have any pain anymore. But they're so used to it that it's like, okay, oh, I'm in pain again. Okay, well, let's just keep going and do our thing, right? And so for her, I think that's what it was. Like she's been in pain for so long that it was hard for her to kind of let go of it because it becomes like a companion in a way. And so when he started the first session, like literally he was, and this is one of the things that was fascinating for me, is like he used the energy of the element of fire and literally just flooded her back with it. And it was, I mean, and it wasn't like, comparing it to like like a lighter or something like that. It wasn't like that kind of fire. It was like forest fire. Whoosh. Like I actually heard the whoosh in my head. I was like, oh, okay. And I saw like, flames all down her back. And it was like, but it wasn't focused on the spine. It was literally just the entire back area. And then, then it was like, then he did okay, so what's your pain level now? And so it would like every time he would send more fire down, it would kind of narrow down like, okay, so this time it's focusing on the nerves. This time it's like, okay, and like the very last time he did it, that was the most interesting for me because it was like this single stream of fire that went straight down the spinal column and through the center of the spinal column. And it was interesting because I could actually see like this dark energy, negative energy, whatever it was, down the center of her spine and or inside the spine. And as the fire was going down, it was literally like poof, 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 with like all this energy was like burning to ash. It was really interesting. So all the way down the spinal column is like all these little poofs all the way down until finally like all, and then he sent another thing of energy that like kind of washed all that out. And then in its place was like this golden energy that was kind of like reinforcing and rebuilding. And then that's when she was like, she was kind of like doing that, like just trying to feel how it is. And she's like, yeah, I feel different. And then that's when she said that, her pain had decreased a lot. And she just couldn't believe that that was the case. So, yeah, that was really fascinating because I'd never seen that before. Like that, I've never seen like the energy like get that fine detail. I mean, like it was like taking stuff out inside each vertebrae and between the vertebrae. I was like, oh, okay.
Well, one thing that makes me think of too, I mentioned earlier that he's learning from us just as we're learning from him. You mentioned that he used fire here, and you've mentioned that he uses the elements. You asked him a question about other elements and whether he's used those, and he hadn't, and so he was going to go back and explore and open to new ways that he could do some healing too.
Yeah,
Those are the
because
people
I
that
had
go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, because I had talked to Crystal about that. I said, yeah, I'm like, but if you're like, if your cosmology is based on like Chinese, then you have more than just the four elements. And Crystal's like, yeah, you have wood and metal. And I said, yeah. And so I wondered if he had ever used those elements as well, because, in our bodies, and if you're looking at it from an Asian or Chinese perspective, like those things work for us too, even though we're not technically Chinese, even though I am part Chinese. But anyway, um, but it's like you could use those same things for other people. You don't have to be Chinese for those things to work for you. And so I had asked him, have you ever done it? And he's like, no, but I'm going to look into it. I'm like, okay.
I
Well,
love those conversations. Those are the best. They're so cool because we're sharing, and then it's like, oh yeah, I've never tried that, but yeah, I want to check it out. So that's the part I love when we all share our experiences like that. It's great. It's more expansive. Yeah. And I love that he's open too. That's what I mean. He's not arrogant. He's really curious too and very open. He calls it fun. He says this is fun. I all this exploring and stuff that he does, he refers to it as fun.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
an
And
adventure.
during the sorry, during the meetings, both of the talks that I went to, it's like he spent a lot of time just busting out laughing because he was like so enjoying it and the energy was making him feel so good at, and he's running around and it was funny because like, he's like telling some story and he's like flapping his arms and stuff. And so he's like literally throwing more energy around the room and and he started laughing on Saturday because he's like, he's like, he goes, I can't imagine what you can see. And I was like, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of stuff. And he just laughed.
That's right, Crystal. At one point, he was working on, I don't know exactly, he was working on someone or just getting ready to start, and something happened that Kai saw, and Kai made some expression. He noticed Kai's expression and went, whoa, like, because then he's more aware of what's happening too, and seeing her awareness. Oh,
He
wild.
Yeah.
says he gets really high. So sometimes he says, I feel like I'm drunk because the energy is just, there's so much bliss and joy and everything in it that it just gives him a supernatural high. So it's fun.
Yeah. He was just laughing and laughing and and just and it would be like it's interesting because like he'd be like working on something really seriously like his face would scrunch up and he'd like and all of a sudden he'd like bust out laughing or just it's like and in some ways it's kind of like okay that's a little weird but then but then it actually feels good like when you like feel the energy of it I'm like okay.
Well, Kai, did anyone stand out? Anyone else from Saturday that you want to talk about? Those are the ones that I was remembering particularly.
Well what was really interesting is one of the people that he worked on actually had an entity. And um, I was like, okay, how are you going to do this? Right? Because when you start dealing with entities, because I mean, that's something that I normally do, um, and it can be a little difficult. I mean, I can't imagine trying to remove entities in front of other people because you never know what it's going to be, what's going to happen. Like for him, he said in his stories that, um, sometimes like when he gets someone that has an entity like they will like literally throw themselves on the floor trying to avoid being healed or whatever and so we had talked about it the following day and he said yeah I was I told it leave quietly like don't throw yourself on the floor and I told him, I said, yeah, I saw it and I saw it leave. And you were very smooth about that because I wasn't sure how people were going to react if they saw the person like throw themselves out. And he's like, yeah, because I told it to leave quietly. I'm like, okay. And
Hmm.
so it was really interesting. And he also had in part of his work on this one person, he was like, oh, I remove all curses. And I'm thinking, yeah, and I know where all those curses came from. But he was just basically trying to give this person like an energetic clean slate, which I thought was really really awesome because that person definitely needed it,
Hmm.
at least from what I could see the energy that was around them, um the stuff that they were connected to, like they definitely needed a clean slate and he was able to give them that.
Great, great. All right. Well, Matt is going to be doing more of these events. So they'll be hosted by MeWe Fairs, BEPC. Matt's going to be having his own events. We encourage all of you to go experience that. Go experience him. He's great for healing what's here, what you know. He's great for helping open you. He's great to learn from, and it's a great opportunity for all of us to learn together more as a community and to make a bigger impact. So you can learn more about Matt and his events at newcastleoracle.com. And if you want to connect with all of us that are here too, that have been sharing, Laureli Shmaya, I'm at intuitiveireading.com, and Kai
My website is handsonfire.buzz.
and Crystal.
That's awesome.
What?
I love it. I hadn't heard it before, and I'm like, yeah, that totally fits. But the buzz part, that was awesome. Okay. You can find my website at openheartpathllc.com.
And that's Crystal Novak. Thank you so much. It's been
Thank
great
you.
being here with all three of you. I look forward to doing more and learning more with all three of you.
Thank you for inviting us.
You're so
It was fun.
welcome.